Milwaukee to Green Bay to Madison, Scranton and Allentown to New York.
Hi, welcome to update number 9 on the Lackawanna Cut-Off. President Biden endorses rail service from New York City to Scranton, including over the Lackawanna Cut-Off. Hi, I'm Chuck Walsh, and I'm president of the North Jersey Rail Commuter Association. And you would have just heard that endorsement, which we just included at the very beginning of this video. Now the question is, what does that mean? What does it mean to have the President of the United States endorse your rail project? Well, from our perspective, obviously we're thrilled. We speculated whether President Biden would actually do this, since he came from Scranton, known as Amtrak Joe. In other words, he has a special connection with Amtrak. And on April the 30th, which was the 50th birthday or anniversary of the creation of Amtrak, President Biden mentioned a number of different potential projects, and one of them was where he talked about New York City to Scranton. Now, there are several things that have to happen. This is not exactly a done deal, although this is certainly a project that now looks like it has even further support, obviously, from the highest levels. But what has to happen is that the infrastructure bill, which is presently in Congress, that has to be delivered to the president's desk. Now, exactly what will be included in that bill is still obviously going to be subject to debate over the coming months. The projected date that it would be delivered to President Biden for his signature is October 1st. We'll see if that happens. And if the $80 billion that is included in that bill for Amtrak to expand its present rail map, if you will, projected, like this route here first appeared last fall on a 2035 map. But the question is, how many of those projects could be funded, well, it depends on how much money is provided in that particular bill. So that's an unknown at this point. But what is known is that obviously the president is supportive of this project. He would not have mentioned it, and it was not an off-the-cuff remark. It was written into his remarks. So therefore, this was planned. And once again, we're gratified, to say the very least, that that has happened. Now, to explain to you exactly what is the proposal here, and a lot of this is not set in stone, but you have to start somewhere. So what I'm going to give you is a proposal which we have been giving to the members of Congress in New Jersey and the U.S. senators. The members of Congress are Donald Payne Jr., Tom Malinowski, Mikey Sherrill, and Congressman Josh Gottheimer, and the U.S. senators would be, of course, Bob Menendez and Cory Booker. Essentially what the project would be, and I think I have to give you the phases for you to make sense of how this would roll out. Now, phase 1 is already in progress. That's the Port Morris or Lake Apacon to Andover section. That's 7.3 miles. That's been the subject of delays. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. However, and I've mentioned this in previous videos, New Jersey Transit is projecting to have the restart of work on Roseville Tunnel, which is really the biggest project that's left within the 7.3 miles. That is projected to start in October of this year, 2021. So that's phase 1. In other words, that would be New Jersey Transit service to Andover. Now, the big question has been, well, what happens west of Andover? In other words, Andover to Delaware Water Gap here, where the tracks begin again, because there's a 21-mile gap where there were no tracks. That has been the major issue in talking about any of this rail service. Well, that part we would consider to be phase 2. Phase 2 would be the completion of the railroad, in other words, putting back the track, the signals and so forth, and making whatever repairs need to be made, such as to the Delaware River Viaduct, for example, behind me, which was, I'll show you a photo of Amtrak being here before, back in 1979. But essentially, that phase 2 is projected to be roughly $288 million to get to the water gap and provide a station at the Delaware Water Gap. But now Amtrak comes in, and Amtrak now provides the possibility of what we'll call a phase 2A, or 2.1, whichever you wanted to call it. And that would extend Amtrak service from New York City to Scranton. Now, what would be the stops along the way? Well, first of all, the first stop, or the place you begin if you go, let's say, from New York to Scranton, would be New York Penn Station. That would be the Northeast Corridor line. You know, it's a main hub. The first stop would be potentially, once again, these are all potentials. The next stop would be at the Secaucus Junction. And that's also considered to be the Northeast Corridor. At that point, after there, the Amtrak train would switch on to the Morristown line via the so-called Kearny connection. We expect that the first stop would be at Newark Broad Street on the Morristown line. That just so happens to be in Donald Payne Jr.'s district. And in looking at the map, and we'll go through this but bear with me here, as we go through the map, you'll see that it just so happens that each of the 4 members of Congress I mentioned before each get at least one station in their district. We're not giving them just for the sake of giving them, but just the way it turns out, it makes sense that way. So the first stop on the Morristown line would be at Newark Broad Street. The next stop we project will be Summit, which is in Congressman Malinowski's district. We can't project exactly how Amtrak would want to, how often they'd want to stop, where they'd want to stop, but we're looking at it from the perspective of, well, the stations that are available, we think about like high-level platforms, which you get both at Newark and Summit. In other words, you can board directly into the train as opposed to going up steps. That's an advantage, although we'll get to a station, at least one station, which won't have that, but it may not be an issue. But parking, things that are going to, and potential ridership, are things that I think are going to drive the decision. Once again, we're proposing this. What will Amtrak do? We can't say. But at least somebody has to propose something, and that's what we're doing here. At least to set a bar someplace. So next stop was Summit. After that we'd go into Mikey Sherrill's congressional district. That's the 11th district. That's her district, the old district of Rodney Frelinghuysen, and that's Morristown. So we think there would be a stop at Morristown. And historically, these are the stations that were seen where the so-called named trains would stop at. We hope to call the train Phoebe Snow. The Phoebe Snow didn't stop at Morristown, but that's okay. It stopped at all the other stations I'm going to be mentioning. Next stop would be also in Tom Malinowski's district. This so happens the way the district works, would be Dover. Now after that, we expect, it's possible there are other stops that could be thrown in between, but we really think realistically there would be the set of stops that I've just mentioned. Now after that would be Blairstown. Now Blairstown would be beyond what would be the Andover section, so to speak, and Blairstown, and then we would go off into the state of Pennsylvania. Now, in Pennsylvania, it's projected that there will be stops at the Delaware Water Gap, at East Stroudsburg, at Pocono Mountain, which is a stop west of Pocono Summit, and then Scranton. And beyond that, where we talk about a phase 3 potentially going as far as maybe Binghamton or to someplace even beyond Binghamton. There's been talk, but I won't get into that. But there's certainly the potential for that occurring. So that's this project that we're talking about. It's actually a quite wide-ranging project, although clearly what Amtrak has committed to is going as far as Scranton. So that's certainly what we think is probably the most likely scenario. Could the project go beyond Scranton? Of course, it's been a project that the beyond the Scranton part has been pushed in the past by Senator Chuck Schumer from New York. But at this point, can't really speak to that. So let's deal with the part that the president has supported, which is New York to Scranton. So that's kind of basically where we are at this point. Now, as I said before, is this a done deal? No. Obviously, there's some things that have to really happen here for this to take place. But I'll use the metaphor of has the fat lady sung? No, not yet. But I think if you want to use that metaphor, I think she's warming up off stage at this point for this project. And that's the way I would put it. So that's where we stand right now. And this is a very positive development. We'll keep you posted as time goes on here. See if there are other pleasant surprises we have, but this is a biggie. So thank you very much for watching, and certainly look forward to our next update on the Lackawanna Cut-Off.